My name is Mary, and I never thought my life would turn out like this. I grew up in what I thought was a normal family, at least. It was normal to us. My dad was always busy with his window frame business, and my mom took care of the house. We weren't rich, but we were doing okay. Dad didn't talk much about work at home. He'd come in late, give Mom a quick kiss, and ask me how school was, and that was it. I didn't mind, though I was happy in my own little world. I remember the day everything changed. I was 23, just out of college, and unsure about what to do with my life. I overheard Dad on the phone, and he sounded tense. "No, absolutely not. I won't let you take over my company. I've worked too hard for this," he said. I shouldn't have listened in, but I couldn't help it. My stomach turned as I realized Dad's company was in trouble. Why hadn't he said anything? That night at dinner, I watched him closely. He seemed normal, joking with Mom about her overcooked pot roast, but I noticed the worry lines around his eyes and how his smile didn't quite reach them. I knew I had to do something, but I had no idea what to do. I didn't know the first thing about business, but I couldn't just sit by and watch our family's livelihood fall apart. The next day, I did some digging. It wasn't hard to find out who was trying to take over Dad's company, a big-time businessman named Scott Peterson. His office was close to our house. When I showed up and asked to see Mr. Peterson, the receptionist looked at me like I was out of my mind. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "No, but it's important. Please, just 15 minutes, I begged. She must have felt sorry for me because after a quick phone call, she waved me towards the elevator. "Top floor," she said. The ride-up felt like it took forever. When the doors opened, I found myself face to face with Scott Peterson. He was older than I expected, with silver hair and sharp eyes. "Well, well," he said, looking me up and down. "What do we have here?" I swallowed hard. "Mr. Peterson, I'm Mary Jason. I'm here about my father's company, Jason Windows." His eyebrows shot up. "Jason's daughter? This is unexpected. Come in, let's talk." I followed him into his office, trying not to be distracted by the view. He settled behind his huge desk and motioned for me to sit. "So, Miss Jason, what can I do for you?" I took a deep breath. "Please don't take over my father's company. It means everything to him. There must be another way." Peterson leaned back, studying me. "Interesting," he said. "I have a deal for you, Miss Jason," Peterson said. "I'll leave your father's company alone if you agree to marry my son." I stared at him, thinking I must have heard him wrong. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Marry my son and help him mature a bit. Do that, and your father's company is safe." I left Peterson's office in a daze. Marry his son? Was he crazy? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't have many options. It was either this or watch my father's life's work fall apart. The next day, I found myself back in that intimidating office. Peterson was waiting with a smug smile on his face. "So, Miss Jason, have you made your decision?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, I'll do it. I'll marry your son." Peterson clapped his hands together. "Excellent. Let me introduce you to, shall we?" Before I knew it, I was being led into another room, and there he was, Peterson's son. I had expected some stiff businessmen, but the man who stood up to greet me was nothing like that. He was tall, with messy dark hair and a crooked smile. "Hey," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Adam. You must be Mary." I shook his hand, trying not to show my surprise. "Yeah, that's me." Adam's father cleared his throat. "I'll leave you two to get acquainted." As soon as the door closed behind him, Adam's relaxed attitude changed. He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "Look, I'm sorry about this. My dad, he's got some pretty old-fashioned ideas." I shrugged, trying to act like it was no big deal. "It's fine. We're both adults, right? We can handle this." Adam laughed, but it sounded forced. "Yeah, sure. Just a casual arranged marriage. No big deal." We spent the next hour talking, and I hate to admit it, But Adam was actually kind of interesting. He was smart and funny, even though he seemed a bit irresponsible. I could see why his father wanted him to grow up. Over the next few weeks, Adam and I started seeing each other, if you could call it dating. We went out to dinners, movies, the usual stuff. But there was always this awkwardness between us. We both knew this wasn't real, no matter how much we tried to pretend. And so, 5 months after that fateful meeting in Peterson's office, I found myself walking down the aisle. My dad looked so proud, so happy. He had no idea about the deal I'd made to save his company as I said my vows. I looked into Adam's eyes. There wasn't any real love there, but there was friendship, and maybe that could be enough. The reception was a blur of congratulations and champagne. At one point, Adam's mother, Linda, cornered me with a tight smile. "Welcome to the family, dear," she said, her voice full of fake sweetness. "I do hope you'll make Adam happy." I forced a smile. "I'll certainly try, Mrs. Peterson." As we left for our honeymoon, I caught a glimpse of my father-in-law. He was beaming, clearly pleased with himself. A wave of anger flashed through me. This was all just a game to him. The first few years of our marriage were interesting, to say the least. Adam and I settled into a routine. We lived in a nice house, thanks to his father's money, but it felt more like we were roommates than husband and wife. I tried my best to be a good influence on Adam, and slowly, I saw changes in him. He started spending less time with his party-loving friends and more time at the office with his father. I could see the pride in his father's eyes when Adam began showing real interest in the business. It made me feel like maybe this whole arrangement wasn't for nothing. Adam's mother, on the other hand, was a different story. She never said anything directly, but I could feel her disapproval. She'd purse her lips when I spoke, or give backhanded compliments like, "Oh, Mary, that dress is interesting. So brave of you to wear something like that." I'd grit my teeth and smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson." Despite the challenges, I held on to hope. Maybe, just maybe, Adam and I could grow to love each other. Maybe having kids would change things. But life had other plans. It was a crisp fall day when we got the news. Adam and I sat in the doctor's office, the silence heavy between us. "I'm sorry," the doctor said gently, "but the tests show that you, Mr. Peterson, are unable to father children." The words hit me like a punch. No children. The one thing I had been counting on to bring us closer, to make this marriage real, was now impossible. That night, as I lay awake, I thought about my own parents. Dad's business had flourished since my marriage to Adam. He had even managed to double his turnover. I was happy for him, truly, but I couldn't help feeling a bit lost. I wanted to work and have a purpose beyond just being Adam's wife. But when I brought it up to him, his response was quick and firm. "Work? Why would you need to work? We have more than enough money." "It's not about the money, Adam. I want to do something meaningful," I replied. He shook his head. "In our circle, wives don't work, they do charity. Why don't you start a foundation or something?" And so the Mary Peterson Foundation for Children with Cancer was born. It wasn't what I had imagined for myself, but it gave me a sense of purpose. I threw myself into the work, organizing fundraisers, visiting hospitals, and doing whatever I could to help. Adam didn't seem to care much about my new passion. In fact, he didn't seem to care much about anything I did anymore. We were living parallel lives, sharing the same space but rarely connecting. Years passed 8, to be exact, and then everything changed again. Adam's father died suddenly of a heart attack. Just like that, Adam was pushed into the role of CDO. I tried to be supportive, but I could see him struggling under the weight of his new responsibilities. 3 years later, we got more bad news. Adam's mother had cancer. "We should move her to a care facility," Adam said, his voice detached. "They can take better care of her there." But his mother refused. "I will die in my own home," she declared, her chin lifted defiantly. So, drawing on my experience with the Cancer Foundation, I took charge of her care. I hired nurses, coordinated treatments, and spent hours by her bedside. To my surprise, Linda's attitude toward me began to soften. One day, as I was adjusting her pillows, she caught my hand. "You're a good woman, Mary," she said softly. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I felt tears well up in my eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson." 6 years passed since Adam took over his father's company. I wish I could say things got better, but the truth was far from it. Adam's behavior became more erratic. He was drinking more, coming home at odd hours, and snapping at me over the smallest things. One day, I received a call from Adam's assistant. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm sorry to bother you, but Mr. Peterson hasn't been to the office in days. Is everything all right?" When Adam finally stumbled home that night, reeking of alcohol, I confronted him. "Adam, what's happening? Your assistant called you haven't been to work." He laughed bitterly. "Work? What's the point? The company's going under anyway. Dear old Dad left me a sinking ship, and I couldn't keep it afloat." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All those years of hard work, gone, and Adam seemed almost relieved. Desperate to save something, I reached out to my father. Even though he was semi-retired, he agreed to help. He offered Adam a position as his deputy, hoping to guide him back to success. But Adam's heart wasn't in it. He showed up late, left early, and did the bare minimum. I watched helplessly as my father's sales began to drop. I knew I had to talk seriously with Adam. One night, after he'd had a few drinks, I approached him. "Adam, we need to talk about work. You're barely showing up, and my father's company is suffering because of you." Adam's face twisted with anger. "Oh, so now it's my fault? I never wanted this, Maria, any of it." "What are you talking about?" I asked. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "This life, this marriage. I'm just waiting for Mom to pass away so I can sell her house and get out of here." I stared at him, horrified. "How can you say that? Your mother is dying, and all you care about is her money." "Don't act all high and mighty," he spat. "We both know this marriage is a sham. You're just as eager to get out as I am." Disgusted, I turned to leave the room. As I opened the door, I came face to face with Adam's mother. The look on her face told me she had heard everything. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then, silently, she reached out and squeezed my hand. In that gesture, I felt her gratitude, her understanding, and her sorrow. The day I got the call about my parents' plane crash, my world shattered. Mom and Dad were gone in an instant. Their small plane to Aspen, Colorado, meant to be a second honeymoon, became their final journey. I needed support, someone to lean on, but Adam was nowhere to be found. My own husband didn't even bother to show up at the funeral. As I stood there, watching my parents' caskets lowered into the ground, I felt more alone than ever. After the funeral, anger began to replace my sorrow. How dare he? How could he abandon me when I needed him most? Fueled by this new fury, I marched into Dad's company, our company now, I supposed. The sight that greeted me when I entered Dad's old office made my blood boil. There was Adam, lounging in Dad's chair like he owned the place, barking orders like some conquering hero. "Adam," I said, my voice tight with barely contained rage, "we need to talk." He looked up, his face full of annoyance. "What is it now, Maria? Can't you see I'm busy?" I snapped, "You couldn't even be bothered to come to my parents' funeral." Adam rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go with the lecturing again. You know what, Maria? Always nagging, always pushing. Well, I'm done with it, and I'm done with you." I stared at him, shocked. Then I noticed something change in his eyes. A cold, calculating look replaced the anger. "You know, Maria," he said, his voice suddenly calm, "this company is worth about $25 million. And guess what? As deputy director, it's all mine now." My heart sank. "What are you talking about?" He leaned back in the chair, Dad's chair, with a smug smile. "I'm the deputy director. I have all the passwords, access to all the accounts. I'm in charge now, and there's nothing you can do about it." "You can't do this," I said, my voice shaking. "You've already ruined your father's company. I won't let you do the same to my father's legacy." Adam laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Oh, I'm not going to run it. I'm going to sell it piece by piece, and then I'm going to live like a king." Before I could stop him, he turned to the computer. I watched in horror as he transferred a large sum from the company account to his personal one. "There," he said, turning back to me, "that should keep me comfortable for a while." Then, as if this whole thing was just a minor inconvenience, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a stack of papers. He tossed them at me casually. "Oh, and here divorce papers. I think it's time we ended this farce, don't you?" I caught the papers reflexively, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. It was too much, too fast. My parents dead, my marriage over, my father's company being stolen right in front of me. I left the office in a daze, clutching the divorce papers in my hand. But as I walked, something inside me shifted. I had spent years bending to Adam's will, to his father's manipulations. No more. It was time to fight back. With renewed determination, I headed straight to my father's lawyer's office. Mr. James had been Dad's friend and confidant for years. If anyone could help me, it would be him. "Mary," Mr. James said, rising to greet me as I entered his office. "I'm so sorry about your parents. How are you holding up?" I collapsed into the chair across from him, the events of the day spilling out in a rush. Mr. James listened patiently, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. When I finished, Mr. James leaned back in his chair with a small smile. "Mary, I think it's time I shared something with you. Your father made some changes to his will just before the accident." As he read the will, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The company, it was mine, all mine. Dad had left it to me, not Adam. But there was more. Mr. James looked up from the papers, his eyes twinkling. "There's something else you should know. Your father dismissed Adam 1 week before his death, fired him outright." I couldn't help it. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh for the first time in what felt like forever. So all those orders Adam was giving were completely meaningless. Mr. James nodded. Then he pulled out an envelope. "There's one more thing, a letter from your father." With shaking hands, I opened it. Dad's familiar handwriting blurred as tears filled my eyes. "My dearest Mary," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry for leaving you like this, but I hope I've left you with the tools to build the life you deserve. The company is yours now, and Maria, it's time to let go of Adam. You've given enough of yourself to that marriage. It's time to live for you. I love you, sweetheart. Make me proud." I looked up at Mr. James, wiping my eyes. "Do you have a pen?" Without a word, he handed me one. I signed the divorce papers Adam had given me, feeling lighter with each stroke of the pen. "Can you file these?" I asked, handing them back. "I want this done as quickly as possible." Mr. James nodded. "Consider it done." As I left his office, I felt free for the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever. I was in control of my own life. No more Adam, no more Petersons pulling my strings. On impulse, I pulled out my phone and called Karen, my best friend from the Charity Foundation. "Karen, it's Mary. Want to meet for coffee? I've got some news." An hour later, we were seated in our favorite cafe, lattes in hand. "So," Karen said, eyeing me curiously, "what's this big news?" I took a deep breath, then let it all out. "Adam, the company, the divorce." Karen listened, her eyes widening. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Girl, you're free, and now you're the boss." I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "I don't know, Karen. Can I really run a company?" I asked, feeling uncertain. She gave me a stern look. "Are you kidding me, Mary? You've been running that charity foundation like a pro for years. You're smart, you're organized, and you actually care about people. You're going to be an amazing CEO." After my talk with Karen, I felt more confident. It was time to face reality and get my things from Adam's house. I never really thought of it as my home, and now I understood why. When I arrived, I found my mother-in-law, Linda, in the living room. She looked tired, worn out from her battle with cancer. "Linda," I said gently, "I'm here to get my things. Adam and we're getting divorced." To my surprise, her eyes filled with tears. "Mary, I know I haven't always been kind to you, but you've been so good to me. Would you consider taking me with you?" I was stunned. "You want to come with me?" Before she could answer, the front door slammed open. Adam stormed in, his face red with anger. "You," he shouted, pointing at me. "What the hell did you do? The company accounts are blocked. I can't access the money." I straightened up, looking him in the eye. "That money isn't yours, Adam. It never was. And by the way, my father fired you 3 weeks ago. You have no claim to the company. I've already told security not to let you into the building." Adam's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then he noticed his mother packing the suitcase. "Mom, what are you doing?" Linda looked at her son, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. "I'm going with Mary. I'm sorry, Adam, but you've proven to be unreliable." Adam's face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Unreliable? Me? This is all your fault. You raised me to be this way, with your coddling and your expectations." He turned to me, his voice full of venom. "Fine, get out, both of you. I don't need either of you." I felt a wave of pity for him. This angry, bitter man was a far cry from the charming, if irresponsible, guy I had married. But I couldn't let that sway me, not anymore. "Come on, Linda," I said softly. "Let's get your things." As we packed, Adam continued to rant and rave, hurling insults and blame. But we tuned him out, focusing on what we needed to do. The drive to my parents' house was quiet. Linda dozed in the passenger seat, the stress of the day taking its toll. As we pulled up to the house, a lump formed in my throat. It felt strange coming here without Mom and Dad. "We're here," I whispered. I gently woke Linda and helped her inside, leading her to my parents' room. It felt right somehow to give her that space. "Are you sure?" Linda asked, her eyes wide as she looked around the room. I nodded, swallowing past the lump in my throat. "Yes, I think they would have wanted it this way." As I helped Linda settle in, I felt a mix of emotions: grief for my parents, relief at being free from Adam, and uncertainty about the future. But beneath it all, there was a glimmer of hope. Taking over Dad's company felt like jumping into the deep end of a pool without knowing how to swim. Those first few months were filled with meetings, financial reports, and sleepless nights, but I was determined to make it work. I hired Paul, a brilliant business consultant, as my right-hand man. He patiently guided me through the complexities of running a multi-million-dollar company. "You've got good instincts, Mary," he'd say. "Trust them." Slowly but surely, I found my footing. 5 months in, I wasn't just getting by, I was thriving. The company's performance began to improve, and I felt a surge of pride, knowing Dad would have been pleased. Through it all, I never neglected the Cancer Foundation. If anything, my work there became even more important to me. It was a connection to my past and a guiding light for my future. Linda's condition worsened over time, and I devoted myself to her care, determined to make her final days as comfortable as possible. We grew close during those 3 years, healing old wounds and forming a bond I never thought possible. The day she passed, I held her hand and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Linda." She squeezed my hand weakly, a small smile on her face, before slipping away peacefully. I organized the funeral myself, making sure everything was just right. Adam didn't show up. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt to see how far he had fallen. A few weeks after the funeral, I received a call from Mr. James. "Mary, there's something you need to see. Can you come to my office?" When I arrived, I was shocked to see Adam there, a young blonde hanging on his arm. He smirked at me. "Well, if it isn't the little CEO. Don't worry, I'm just here to collect my inheritance. Mom and I might have had our differences, but blood is thicker than water, right? I held back my words, waiting for Mr. James to speak. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading Linda's will. As he spoke, I watched Adam's smug expression turn to disbelief, then to anger. And so, I leave my house and all my savings to marry Jason, with the stipulation that the money be donated to the Cancer Foundation she so passionately supports. Tears filled my eyes as Linda's final act of kindness overwhelmed me. Adam exploded. This is a joke. She manipulated Mom. She's a fraud, a gold digger. She ruined my life, and now she's stealing my inheritance. His girlfriend, looking confused, stepped away from him. You said we'd be set for life with this money. I'm out of here. She stormed out, leaving Adam sputtering in disbelief. As I left the office, I could hear Adam's angry rants fade behind me. I felt light, free. Linda's gift wasn't just about the money, it was validation. She had seen me, truly seen me, and found me worthy.